Most people think moving to a new state is just about packing boxes, loading a truck, and starting fresh. A new job, a better city, a cheaper place to live. It sounds like a reset button. But what nobody tells you is that the moment you decide to move, the costs begin stacking up in ways you don't see coming. Not loudly, not all at once, quietly, slowly. And by the time you realize how deep it goes, you're already in it. It usually starts with hope. Hope that life will be easier. Hope that money will stretch further. Hope that this move will finally be the thing that fixes everything. Maybe rent is cheaper there, maybe taxes are lower. Maybe there are more opportunities. And on paper, it all makes sense. Numbers line up. The plan feels solid. You tell yourself this is a smart decision. But real life doesn't move on paper. The first hit often comes before you even leave. Application fees for apartments. Background checks, credit checks. Each one small enough to ignore, but together they start draining your savings. Then there's the security deposit. First month's rent, sometimes last month's rent too. Suddenly, thousands of dollars are gone before you've slept a single night in a new place. Then comes the move itself. Trucks cost more than you expect. Gas prices fluctuate. Hotels if the drive takes more than a day. Food on the road. Time off work if your job doesn't cover relocation. And if you're moving for a job that hasn't started yet, that gap becomes dangerous. Every day without income stretches your budget thinner. People underestimate how stressful that in-between phase is. You're no longer settled where you came from, but you're not fully established where you're going. You're floating, and floating costs money. Once you arrive, the hidden costs don't stop. They change shape. You need furniture because what fit in your old place doesn't fit here. You need household basics you didn't realize you'd thrown away or sold. Internet setup fees. Utility deposits because you're new in the system. Sometimes higher car insurance because rates change by state. New license fees. New registration fees. New inspections. Each one feels like a small punch you didn't brace for. And then there's healthcare. New state often means new insurance rules. New networks. New doctors. Prescriptions that suddenly cost more because your old coverage doesn't apply. Appointments that need to be re-established. Paperwork that takes months to sort out. If something goes wrong medically during this transition, the financial damage can be brutal. Social costs are harder to measure, but just as real. You lose your support system. Friends who could help in emergencies. Family who could watch your kids for an hour. People who knew you well enough to notice when something was wrong. In a new state, you're on your own. And when you're on your own, every problem becomes more expensive. Childcare is different, sometimes more expensive, sometimes harder to find. Waiting lists can stretch for months. Parents end up missing work or paying premium rates just to keep things running. What was manageable before suddenly feels impossible. And work itself doesn't always stabilize quickly. Even with a job lined up, probation periods are real. Benefits take time to kick in. Sick days might not be available yet. One mistake, one absence, one unexpected issue can put your position at risk. That fear sits quietly in the background, affecting every decision you make. People don't talk enough about the mental weight of all this. The constant calculations. The fear of running out of money before you run out of month. The pressure to make the move worth it, even when things aren't going well. Admitting regret feels like failure, so people stay silent and push through. And credit scores don't reset just because you cross state lines. In fact, they often take a hit. Hard inquiries from apartment applications. Increased utilization from moving expenses. Missed payments because of address changes or delays. One late bill during this chaotic period can follow you for years. What hurts the most is how normal this struggle has become. Society treats moving as a personal choice, not a financial risk. If things go wrong, the blame falls on the individual. You should have planned better. You should have saved more. But no one talks about how the system punishes mobility, especially for people without a financial cushion. For many, moving to a new state isn't about adventure. It's about survival, chasing work, escaping rising rent, leaving unsafe situations, trying to breathe. And when survival decisions come with hidden costs, the damage runs deep. This is where dreams start to shrink. People stop aiming for better and start aiming for stable. They settle not because they want to, but because they're tired of rebuilding, tired of starting over, tired of paying the price for trying to improve their lives. And the scariest part is this: even when things finally stabilize, the financial impact lingers. Savings are gone. Debt is higher. Confidence is shaken. One unexpected expense away from crisis again. The move didn't fail, but it didn't deliver the freedom that was promised either. If you've ever moved states and felt like life got harder instead of easier, you're not imagining it. You're seeing the hidden costs most people never warn you about. And this is only the beginning. Once the boxes are unpacked and the adrenaline fades, reality settles in. This is the part no one prepares you for. The quiet weeks after the move, when life is supposed to feel normal again. But somehow it doesn't. You wake up in a new place, surrounded by unfamiliar sounds, unfamiliar streets, unfamiliar routines, and you realize that starting over costs more than money. It costs emotional energy, confidence, and a sense of belonging. In the old state, you knew how things worked. You knew where to go, who to call, which shortcuts to take. In the new state, everything takes longer. Simple tasks become exhausting. Finding a grocery store you trust. Learning traffic patterns. Understanding local laws that are slightly different, but still affect your daily life. Even something as basic as understanding how trash pickup works can feel oddly stressful when everything else already feels unstable. And then there's work. If you move for a job, expectations come fast. You're expected to perform, adapt, and prove yourself, often while you're still emotionally drained from the move. Coworkers don't see the nights you spent worrying about rent. They don't see the credit card balance climbing. They see you as the new person, and that pressure to fit in quietly adds to everything else. If you didn't have a job lined up, the stress multiplies. Job hunting in a new state is different. Employers don't know you. Your local references don't carry the same weight. Interviews cost time and money, gas, parking, clothes. And every rejection feels heavier because the stakes are higher. There's no familiar fallback anymore. What many people don't realize is how moving reshapes your relationship with money. You become hyper-aware of every dollar. You hesitate before spending on anything that isn't absolutely necessary. Small pleasures feel irresponsible. Eating out feels risky. Even rest feels like something you haven't earned yet. And when you live like that for months, it changes you. People start measuring their worth by how well they're holding it together. They stop asking for help because they don't want to admit the move didn't to magically fix everything. Pride becomes expensive. Silence becomes heavy. For families, the pressure is even deeper. Kids struggle to adjust to new schools, new accents, new social rules. Parents watch their children change and wonder if the move was a mistake. Guilt creeps in quietly. You tell yourself it was necessary, that it will be better in the long run. But guilt doesn't care about logic. Relationships take a hit too. Couples argue more. Stress shortens patience. Decisions feel heavier because mistakes feel more costly now. There's less room for error, less room for softness. And then there's the long-term damage that no one tracks on a spreadsheet. Retirement contributions pause to cover moving costs. Emergency savings wiped out. Debt normalized. These aren't temporary setbacks. They compound. Years later, people wonder why they're behind financially, and the answer traces back to that one move that drained everything. Even opportunities shrink. People become hesitant to move again, even when a better job appears. The memory of financial instability sticks. Fear replaces flexibility. What was supposed to be a fresh start becomes a trap of caution. This is how mobility becomes a privilege. Not because people don't want to move, but because they can't afford to do it safely. And yet, despite all of this, people rarely talk about it honestly. Social media shows smiling photos in new cities. New beginnings. New chapters. But behind those images are stories of stress, debt, and quiet regret that never make it online. That silence is dangerous because it makes others feel alone when they go through the same thing. If you felt this, if you've wondered why moving didn't feel like freedom, it's not because you failed. It is because the system makes starting over expensive in ways that aren't too obvious until you're already living them. And the hardest part is realizing that there's no clear finish line. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel settled. Stability creeps in slowly, unevenly. Some months feel okay. Others feel like you're slipping backward. And through it all, you're expected to be grateful because at least you moved. But gratitude doesn't erase debt. It doesn't refill savings. It doesn't restore the emotional energy you spent just surviving. Still, people adapt. They always do. They find routines. They rebuild networks. They slowly regain confidence. Not because the cost disappears, but because humans are resilient. That resilience deserves acknowledgement, not dismissal. If this part of the story feels familiar, stay with me. Because what comes next is something almost no one talks about at all. The way moving to a new state quietly reshapes your identity, your sense of safety, and the choices you make for the rest of your life. After a while, something subtle begins to happen. It's not dramatic. There's no single moment where you notice it clearly. But slowly, the version of you that existed before the move starts to fade. Not completely. Just enough that you feel different in ways you can't fully explain. In the old place, you had history. You had a story that made sense. People knew where you came from, what you'd been through, what you were capable of. In the new state, you're starting at zero. No context, no shared memories, no shortcuts to trust. Every relationship has to be built from the ground up, and that takes time, energy, and emotional risk. At first, you tell yourself this is temporary, that once things settle, you'll feel like yourself again. But settling doesn't mean the same thing anymore. It doesn't mean comfort, it means functioning, paying bills on time, showing up to work, keeping life from falling apart. And when that becomes the goal, parts of you go quiet. You stop dreaming out loud. You stop talking about long-term plans. You become careful with your words, careful with your hopes, because hope feels expensive now. It feels like something that could hurt if it doesn't work out. This is one of the hidden costs no one measures. The cost of caution. People who move and struggle often become very good at survival. They learn how to stretch money, how to adapt quickly, how to manage stress without letting it show. On the outside, they look strong, responsible, put together. But inside, there's a constant awareness of how fragile everything feels. One rent increase, one job loss, one medical issue, one unexpected expense. The safety net feels thinner than it ever did before. That feeling changes how people make choices. They stay in jobs they don't like because stability feels safer than growth. They avoid risks that could lead to better opportunities because the memory of instability is still fresh. They prioritize predictability over fulfillment, not because they want to, but because they don't feel like they can afford another reset. And over time, that shapes identity. People stop seeing themselves as someone who is building a life and start seeing themselves as someone who is maintaining survival. That shift is quiet but powerful. It affects confidence. It affects motivation. It affects how people show up in relationships and conversations. Even success feels different. When something good happens, there's relief instead of joy. Relief that things didn't get worse. Relief that this month is covered. Relief that you're still standing. But relief is not the same as peace. What makes this harder is that others don't always understand. From the outside, moving states looks like progress, a brave step, a bold decision. People assume you're doing better now, even when you're barely holding on. And correcting that assumption feels awkward, so most people don't. They smile. They say they're fine. They keep the truth to themselves. And that isolation adds another layer to the cost. Humans are not meant to rebuild everything alone. Community is not a luxury. It's a stabilizer. And when you lose it, life becomes more expensive emotionally and financially. You pay for help you used to get for free. You manage stress without support. You carry burdens silently. Over months and years, that weight accumulates. Some people eventually find their footing. They build new friendships. They get better jobs. They slowly recover financially. But even then, the experience leaves a mark. They don't forget how quickly stability disappeared. They don't forget how alone they felt. That memory stays with them, shaping how they prepare for the future. Others never fully recover. They remain one step behind, always catching up, always rebuilding. Not because they made bad choices, but because the move drained resources they never had a chance to replace. This is why telling people to just move for a better life oversimplifies something deeply complex. Moving is not just a change of address. It's a financial gamble, an emotional reset, and an identity shift all at once. And the system rarely offers grace during that transition. There are no pauses on bills while you adjust. No discounts for being new. No understanding when things fall through the cracks. Life keeps charging full price, even when you're still finding your footing. Yet despite all of this, people continue to move. They continue to chase something better. Because staying stuck can feel just as dangerous as starting over. And that tension lives inside millions of people quietly, shaping their days, their decisions, their sense of self. If this part of the story feels uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. Many people carry this experience without ever naming it. But naming it matters. Because once you understand the real cost, the struggle makes more sense. And there's still one part left to talk about. The part that rarely gets acknowledged. The long shadow a move can cast over the future, even years later, and how people slowly learn to carry it. Years pass. On the surface, life looks stable again. The address has been the same for a while. The job feels familiar. Bills are mostly on time. From the outside, it seems like the move worked out. But inside, the experience still echoes in small, quiet ways. You notice it when someone suggests another move for a better opportunity, and your chest tightens a little. You notice it when rent increases, and your first instinct isn't anger, but fear. You notice it when you finally have a bit of savings again, and instead of feeling proud, you feel protective, almost anxious about touching it. That's the long shadow of starting over. The move taught your nervous system a lesson it never forgets. That stability can vanish quickly. That safety is fragile. That being new is expensive. So even when life improves, your body remembers the stress. This affects future decisions more than people realize. People turn down opportunities that require relocation, even if they pay more. They choose familiarity over advancement. They stay put not because they're comfortable, but because they're afraid of reopening old wounds. And that fear isn't irrational. It's learned. The system taught it. When mobility comes with financial punishment, people adapt by limiting movement. That's how inequality quietly hardens. Those with money can move safely. They can absorb deposits, gaps in income, and unexpected costs. Those without savings pay a higher price for the same decision, and that price follows them for years. Even children feel the after effects. They grow up watching parents worry about money. They learn early that change is risky, that security is rare. Those lessons shape how they approach adulthood, often making them cautious long before they've had the chance to dream freely. But here's the part that deserves to be said clearly. Struggling after a move does not mean the move was a mistake. And it does not mean you failed. It means you stepped into a system that charges heavily for transition, especially if you don't arrive with a financial buffer. The problem isn't that people move. The problem is that starting over has become a luxury instead of a basic possibility. Yet even in that reality, people find ways to rebuild. They learn to budget smarter. They rebuild credit. They slowly create new support systems. They regain pieces of themselves that went quiet during survival mode. That process is slow, it's uneven, and it doesn't look impressive from the outside, but it's real progress. And it deserves compassion, not judgment. If you're listening to this and thinking about a move, or still feeling the weight of one you made years ago, understanding these hidden costs can help you make sense of your experience. It can help you stop blaming yourself for things that were never fully in your control. And if you've already lived this story, your voice matters more than you think. Share your experience in the comments. Not to complain, but to connect. To let someone else know they're not alone in feeling this way. And if you know someone who's considering a move or struggling after one, share this video with them. It might help them prepare, or at least feel understood. Thanks for staying through the entire story. Conversations like this don't change everything overnight, but they do something important. They replace silence with honesty. And honesty is where real understanding begins.